on East Africa that occurred about 2 weeks ago. And, there was plenty of talks on like several countries, as well as plenty of talks in Eritrea's role in the region from America's perspective. Specifically, the guest speaker, Joshua Mersave, and Senator Chris Van Hollen were talking about Eritrea's alleged involvement in the Tigray War, as well as relation with Ethiopia after the war. And very specifically, if anybody would like to check the Senate hearing on YouTube or, the press release in the embassy's website, Senator Van Hollen was expressing concerns over a boiling situation and implying that there is like a potential war that could break out between Eritrea and Ethiopia. Could you possibly shed some light on Eritrea's stance this past few years and your reaction to many media reports of a potential brewing war going on between the two countries?
Well, I also forget. Thank you for raising this important issue. But I forgot to wish everybody happy 34th Eritrea's Independence Day. So, with the question that you raised, with all due respect to Mr. Meserve and Senator Van Hollen, I believe their characterization of Eritrea's role in the Horn of Africa, particularly, excuse me, let me just.
Of course.
Yeah. So their view regarding the Tigray conflict and post-war relation with Ethiopia is, everybody knows this is based on misreading of the facts on the ground and regional dynamics. Their statements are based on a flawed reading of events on the ground. The Tigray conflict was triggered by TPLF. It was unprovoked attack in Eritrea that includes missile strikes on over 100 strategic infrastructure sites inside Eritrea, such as like power stations, water reservoirs, factories, hospitals, and civilian areas. So Eritrea's response was a matter of national defense, not aggression. Eritrea's involvement during the Tigray conflict cannot be separated from its long-standing security concern. The TPLF, which initiated the conflict in November 2020, has a well-documented history of aggression toward Eritrea, including passive invasions, provocations, and support for destabilizing elements. Eritrea's action during this conflict were focused on neutralizing these destabilizing factors, not pursuing expansion or confrontation with its neighborly country. Second, the suggestion that Eritrea and Ethiopia are on the brink of war is both speculative and unfounded, since the historic peace agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia in 2018, both governments were taking significant steps to normalize relations. While the peace of institutional implementation may vary, there is no credible evidence to support their claims, the senators and Mr. Meserve's claims that imminent conflict is imminent around the Horn of between Eritrea and Ethiopia. On the contrary, Eritrea has repeatedly expressed its desire for peaceful, cooperative regional relations based on mutual sovereignty and non-interference policy. Today, Eritrea is fully within its internationally recognized border, a fact that has been clearly and repeatedly affirmed through official channels. Yet, for reasons that I don't really understand, Mr. Meserve and Senator Van Hollen seem to suggest otherwise, which is both inaccurate and unhelpful to get the peace going, peace between the two countries. As for claims of brewing war, and they are unfounded. Again, the unfortunately, much of the media discourse on Eritrea continues to rely on secondary sources, anonymous claims, or politically motivated narratives, often without direct engagement with Eritreans' perspective. It's not that they don't understand, they know very well what Eritrea's perspective is. However, for reasons again that it bugs me, always these accusations are distorted and disinformed, and which created a distorted image of Eritrea's intention and policy. Eritrea remains committed, as always, it is in its history, it's its track record, that um, it is committed to regional peace, security, and economic integration of the entire Horn of Africa. The country vision is rooted in non-aggression, mutual respect, and a desire to build stable, independent institutions across the Horn of Africa, like IGAD. We would like to see it to be very independent and strong institution that advance the interests of the Horn of Africa people. Such, like alarmist rhetorics that we hear, they does a little to support this vision. And in fact, it undermines the possibility of constructive dialogue with one another. I would encourage a more balanced approach that includes listening, we said active listening, to all stakeholders, not to one faction to advance for other motives, but to all stakeholders with intention to create a stable political environment, and avoiding conclusions based on unverified reports or other assumptions or outdated assumptions. So that's how I can respond to your question, Lemuel.
Sure, absolutely. And I could definitely see like a lot of misrepresentations and like over exaggerations, like especially over the potential for a conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. I mean, just from personal anecdotal experience, like many friends and relatives that we have back in Asmara. Like, if you talk to them about like potential for boiling war, for them it's just like, what war? What's going on? Like, what potential situation? Relations between the two countries may not be at the best, but there is no like fear of war or like, mobilization in any sense that could be felt like in the capital or from anybody that I could say that I know back in Eritrea. Um, Looking at it look a little more broadly, because you gave like a very broad explanation on like Eritrea stance. So I like to ask this. Many analysts describe Eritrea as like a largely isolationist nation, lacking relations with the outside world, and even sort of being nicknamed poorly as the North Korea of Africa. However, we have seen over the past several years that Eritrea has no qualms in engaging with neighboring countries on multiple levels. Whether it could be through Eritrea rejoining IGAD, or it could be like, the Trilateral partnership that was made with Egypt and Somalia, both of which we'll elaborate more on later. Um, what can you describe as the key pillars of Eritrea's foreign policy with other countries in East Africa? And how can you describe how they took these key principles into action in the
Well,
past
yeah,
recent years?
I touched on that a little bit. Usually when people talk about North Korea of Eritrea, when they describe Eritrea as North Korea of Africa, one saying that comes to my mind, a sarcastic kind of way, as that's somewhere I read, like it's called it Switzerland as a Himalaya of Europe, just because it has mountains. So these are kind of lazy talking descriptions and labeling point that oversimplify and distort the reality and ground, distort Eritrea's image. It was made specifically for that. Eritrea is not isolationist. It is independent. There's a difference. Eritrea choose um, engagements based on clear principles, mutual respect, sovereignty, and non-interference. So this does not subscribe to the notion that legitimacy comes from how many press conferences you hold or external powers backs you up. Over the past several years, Eritrea has actively engaged with neighboring countries. We've seen that extremely well coordinated engagements, and in the international community as well. It played a central role in a 2018 peace agreement with Ethiopia without any foreign mediation. It has um, maintain constructive relations with Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, Egypt, Kenya, cooperating on issues ranging from infrastructure to trade to regional security and stability, fighting terrorism, and so on. Eritrea resists dependency, double standard, and coercive diplomacy. If refusing to bow to pressures, sanctions, being bullied, um, maintains dependency, or invite foreign interference, earn you a nickname, then perhaps I think the issue lies not with Eritrea, but with the mindset behind those labels. So let's move beyond headlines and start having honest conversations about sovereignty, regional ownership, and kind of um, partnership that actually lead to peace progress. So yeah, that's how I see with the pillars and so on.
All right, great. Yeah, and I'm sure like, many of those pillars have definitely shown up in just the 2020s alone. We're not even, we're barely halfway through and so much has happened. Like, these past 5 years where I really put those key principles into the test. Now, a thing with foreign policy is that a lot of people they tend to put it under the veneer of something that's like far out. Usually, there's this concept of foreign policy that is just not so relatable towards the actual people domestically. People in elections, like they're usually far more concerned with economics, with social issues, especially for countries like the UK or the US, where they're a little more distant from like, mainland and like have very few like nearby enemies to deal with. So foreign policy is sort of seen as like beyond, the attention or even care of people domestically. Um, I would like to shed light on like if that same sort of sentiment is experienced in Eritrea, given its different circumstance of being like bordered with with about like 4 to 3 neighbors in one of the most unstable regions in Africa. Ultimately, how could you say that like Horn of African politics or just foreign politics in general affect Eritrea and its people domestically, if any?
Um, sure. I mean, developments in the Horn of Africa have a direct and profound impact on Eritrea and to everyone. I always like to um, refer to systems theory when this kind of views are arise, because every country in the Horn is interconnected with one another. So both in terms of domestic stability and the pursuit for economic development, and these countries are they have a profound effects on each other, and same time as Ethiopia. There's a saying, you cannot build a mansion in a ghetto. Eritrea cannot be by itself a peaceful or prosperous nation. So always the neighborhood has to be peace, and that's what our principle is. Um, for us to be a peaceful country, and there has to be a peaceful region. The Horn is not a marginalized region. It comprises about 300 million people, spans of more than, I believe, it's over 2 million square um, kilometers, and holds some of the most strategic water in the world, including the access to Red Sea, Bab el Mandeb, the Bab el Mandeb Strait, and Gulf of Aden. So it collectively goes all the way from Indian Ocean to Red Sea, and it collective economic potential from agriculture, fishery, logistics, mining, and renewable energy, environmental sustainable energy is extremely significant. Yet this potential remains largely untapped due to recurring instability, external interferences, and fracture regional cooperations. And so for Eritrea, regional peace isn't just a diplomatic preference, it is economic necessity. Stability means the ability to trade, connect through infrastructures, develop ports, and attract investments and movements of people, and so on and so on. So it also means reducing the heavy security burden that conflicts impose on the state and its people. Yeah, imagine if you have a peaceful region, how much resources is going to word as either offensive or defensive purposes in terms of military equipments and so on. So, and mainly it's within neighbors. There's no quarrels that each country has with someone way outside this region. So, yeah. So this is why Eritrea champions principles such as sovereignty, non-interference, mutual respect, and regional ownership. These are very important, poignant points that we always try to advocate. Like the country model of self-reliance is not about isolation. Earlier we talked about a little bit of isolation, because when we said self-reliance and people think we are being isolated, no, it's about building uh, foundation strong enough to withstand external shocks while enabling meaningful cooperation with neighbors. When the region is stable, Eritrea benefits and everybody else benefits from improved commerce, mobility, and partnership. When it's destabilized, Eritrea bears the cost like everyone else. And we've seen Somalia, Ethiopia conflict, we've seen Eritrea, Ethiopia conflict, we've seen the conflict in Sudan, we've seen conflict in South Sudan, and all that. So it affects everybody, and everyone will bear the cost. So in short, it's peace and principal region cooperation in the Horn are essential building blocks for Eritrea's economic development, and unlocking the vast potential of region as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say like especially like, in areas so volatile as like the Horn of Africa, I feel like foreign policy definitely has much more of an effect in that region, not just with Eritrea, but also with Ethiopia, with Somalia, and plenty of other countries in the regions as well. Because worst case scenario, if war breaks out, the very first victims are the people, ultimately, and the people living in like the most vulnerable communities, those like in villages, those who may have certain medical conditions or financial conditions that may not allow them to afford to leave. I mean, just that alone. could be able to, have foreign policy be much more of a bigger deal in that part of the world compared to here. I would actually kind of like to turn a little bit back to the joint communique that was you mentioned was signed between Eritrea and the Republic of Kenya, and which part of which is that, as you mentioned, Eritrea proudly rejoined IGAD. It wasn't even placed on like some sort of condition. I think the way that President Ruto of Kenya and President Isaias of Eritrea described it is that Ruto brought up the possibility of Eritrea joining IGAD, and then President Isaias said, "Say no more. We will join IGAD, no problem." And to anybody who may not be familiar, EGAD is actually a trading bloc that includes nearly all East African countries that tries to promote economic trade between its members. Part of that joint communique, it also eliminated visa requirements for Kenyans and Eritreans to visit each other's countries. How do you think that joint communique that was signed back in 2023 reflects Eritrea's vision for mutual economic growth in the region? And what implications do you think that will have for the East African region in general and general bridge building diplomacy that countries are trying to do?
Yeah, so Eritrea was absent or froze its membership for principled reasons. And earlier I was talking about how outside interference is how it fuels issues, problems within the region. And I don't want to go back and talk about the story why Eritrea froze its membership for a while. As of course we all know, it's due to the Ethiopia's invasion of Somalia, but Eritrea rejoined of IGAD after years of principled, like I said, absence, along with the elimination of visa requirements with Kenya, like you mentioned, and it reflects a deliberate and forward-looking shift toward regional integration that has always been in Eritrea's policy. This integration has to be based on equality, mutual respect, and shared prosperity. So these decisions are not symbolic; they are strategic. The signal Eritrea's commitment to building economic bridges. That's what in a set of walls and in Horn, the East Africa. So this is how we believe there should be a bridge, not walls that to prevent one another from interact. So Eritrea's envision a region where mobility, trade, and cooperation replacing suspicious and divisions. By removing visa restrictions, Eritrea and Kenya have taken a meaningful small step toward strengthening people-to-people ties, business exchange, and hopefully, and of course, a diplomatic trust. Similarly, re-engaging with IGAD offers a platform to advance collective solution to a common challenge, whether it be locus or it be commerce, whether it be developmental, environmental issue, and security issue. So whether it's this kind of climate resilience, cross-border infrastructures, or regional peace buildings are needed, IGAD offer is, I hope, at least in principle, offers those platforms. But the issue is clear. Cooperation must be rooted in sovereignty, accountability, and a partnership. Again, not external dictates. Ultimately, Eritrea's move show that it seeks not only self-reliance, but also mutual interdependence grounded in respect. That is how Eritrea sees sustainable economic growth in the region, not through imposed blueprints of foreign powers, but through cooperation that reflects the realities and priorities of the region itself.
Great, absolutely. Great. And I think also reflecting on the priorities of Eritrea within like the region, I think that was particularly shown as well in October last year, where the presidents of Eritrea, Somalia, and Egypt had a summit in the Eritrean capital Asmara, in which they actually formed a trilateral agreement, something that you also mentioned a little bit in the beginning, where they agreed to, quote, enhance strategic cooperation with each other. And specifically, this was of concern with Somalia's capacity to confront internal and external threats. And in that context, it was particularly done when in Somalia, between Somalia and Ethiopia, there was a situation where there was a signing of a memorandum of understanding where Ethiopia and the breakaway region of Somaliland had an agreement where Ethiopia could consider giving them recognition of independence in trade for a potential economic and military base on their coast. Now, Ethiopia, as one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and probably the biggest country in the world that's landlocked, this was particularly a deal of their best interest. However, for the implications in the wider region in general, given Somaliland's lack of recognition due to Somalia itself not recognizing Somaliland's independence, this had great implications within the region. It was condemned by many regions, by many countries in East Africa, and in particular Eritrea, Somalia, and Egypt, kind of in a reaction towards that memorandum of understanding, formed their own trilateral agreement where they pledged to defend Somalia in confronting any threats that could pose to Somalia's integrity. So how would you say that this agreement reflects Eritrea's relations with Somalia and Egypt? And does this leave any room for potential future cooperation between those two countries?
So the memorandum that I don't believe anybody see or saw is about Somaliland and Ethiopia that did not go through for whatever reason. Now, the question is the claim or the rhetoric of Ethiopia about having sea access through peace or otherwise. And because of that kind of mentality, because if I don't have it, I'll have it. I'll have whatever I want to. I desire to do this because of this reason. And that is what the whole chaos come from. But the October 20 summit between the presidents of Eritrea, Somalia, and Egypt, it is not anti-Ethiopia. It reflects Eritrea's continued commitment to strategic principal partnerships in the region. The focus on Somalia security and sovereignty against both internal and external threats that the country is facing aligns with Eritrea's long-standing policy of supporting stable, unified states and the Horn of Africa. Eritrea has always been supporting stability to any country, whether it's Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, anyone in the Horn of Africa. So the trilateral agreement does not render the 2018 Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia partnerships absolute. Rather, it highlights how the regional dynamics evolves, and how Eritrea engaged flexibility with like-minded partnership based on shared value and respect, like I said earlier, for sovereignty and mutual interest. So the 2018 agreement was groundbreaking in restoring peace and cooperation after decades of hostility partners, particularly between Ethiopia and Eritrea. However, sustaining such partnership require consistency, trust, mutual respect, and principle that Eritrea hold firmly. So the Asmara Summit also underscored Eritrea's recognition of Egypt, in a way, as an important regional actor, particularly in matters reflecting to Red Sea security and broader Horn of region. Um, Earlier, I talked about like how the Horn of Africa is extremely vast, mass land that covers all the way from Red Sea to Indian Ocean, and so it reflects Eritrea's strategic calculus in promoting balanced mutual cooperation, um, not exclusionary blocks or alignments. In short, Eritrea's engagement with Somalia and Egypt demonstrates the dynamics and principle-driven foreign policy, not a shift away from previous commitments, but an effort to reinforce peace and stability throughout the diverse and continually evolving partnership.
And especially, in a region that's like, susceptible to change so much. You see a lot of those shifts in partnerships and agreements. But of course, I feel like for most other nations in the world, in a perfect world, in an ideal world, nations could be able to collaborate and, like to see partnership and peace within like the area. As you said, you can't build a mansion in a ghetto. So, you have to make sure that, the whole area itself is in like peaceful economic cooperation with you. And, I think like, with those agreements, it's sort of like a reflection of that to make sure that like that sort of peaceful neighborhood could be formed. And on top of that trilateral agreement that was done in Asmara, looking at it more broadly, many nations around the world have seen like a key interest in Eritrea in the past 5 years. I mean, in the last 2 years alone, President Isaias and Foreign Minister Osman Saleh have actually met with the leaders
Ale.
of China. Yeah, Saleh, my apologies, had actually met with the leaders of China, with Russia, with Saudi Arabia, and even with Iran, with that diversity sort of in countries that they met with, it, and have joined also like, multinational partnerships, such as, participating in the BRICS meetings that occurred about 2 years ago, and with the Japanese Africa Summit that occurred about 3 years ago as well. So, with Eritrea's greater participation in these multilateral, or like, in many countries having bilateral meetings with Eritrea, where they host them in their countries, it shows an increasing prevalence and increasing interest of Eritrea and the role that it can play as a stabilizer in the Horn of Africa, and to push a specific interest in the Horn of Africa as well. What role do these countries of the world see as Mara playing in stabilizing the Horn of Africa, or, to push an interest in the Horn of Africa?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Iran, but yeah, in like the recent years, we see Eritrea has become a more prominent and a respected voice in the regional diplomacy, international diplomacy as well. It's not because it changed its principles, but because the world is, I believe, this is my view, is slowly catching up to Eritrea's truthful stand. So the vision and meetings with leaders from like China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Italy, South Korea, um, those engagements and more reflects the growing recognition of Eritrea's strategic location, especially policy consistency. It's very consistent with policy, and it's what you see is what you get in Eritrea, and it's a stabilizing presence in the Horn of Africa. So these are getting more and more recognition. So what's even more telling is that the United States has also shown a renewed interest in working with Eritrea, something that long overdue. After years of misunderstanding and mischaracterization, um, there is a growing acknowledgement in Washington that Eritrea plays a critical role regional peace and the Red Sea security and non-aligned sovereignty diplomacy. So these global and regional powers do not view Eritrea as a satellite client, but as an independent and principled state, one that brings credibility, very important, clarity, and stability to a volatile neighborhood. So Eritrea's support for Somalia security, it trained its military, and now many people you see, many countries like Turkey and so on, that they are supporting Somalia security and so on. But Eritrea trained Somalia for military to help stabilizing the country. That is, you see what's a major diplomacy with Egypt and a firm stance on, again, non-interference. We always say issues in Sudan has to be um, um, resolved by the Sudanese people with their own way. We see other foreign interferences exacerbating things, the situation in Sudan and so on. So this all contributes to its image as a country that can build Eritrea's image as a country that can build a bridge without compromising sovereignty. That's the most important part. I guess in short, Eritrea is increasingly seen as a constructive force and a country that stands on principle and not pressure. The recognition of by Eritrea's old and new is not only welcome, but it is long overdue. And I think there'll be still some forces will be undermine Eritrea's characters I just mentioned earlier. However, and with time, with tenacity, with steadfastness of the Eritrean people, the leadership, and both in diaspora and inside the country, will continue to bring that recognition. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that eloquent answer. That was actually the final question. I think we have like about, I would say like about, at least like 30 minutes, for open Q&A. If you would like, you could either like say your questions directly through audio, or you can post your questions through the chat, and I could be able to, say it to Mr. Haile. himself. So whichever one you're more comfortable with, whether through chat or directly through audio, that's completely fine. So with that said, I think we have one hand raised for Miguel. Would you like to say your question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, my camera is actually not working. I'm on a friend's desktop. Um, my question would be, so basically, as far as Eritrea, and we noticed that it has a lot of stability, internal stability compared to a lot of the nations around it, and that kind of reflects also on the State Department website when they have their travel advisories. You'll see that Eritrea has a level 2 travel advisory equivalent or similar to like countries like France or any European countries. But then you see everybody around Eritrea has like a level 3 or a level 4 travel advisory, which kind of means don't travel or reconsider travel, and that kind of reflects the stability that's or the chaos that's going on in the area. So my question would be, how can Eritrea maybe use its stable status right now in a highly volatile area to influence regional stabilities, maybe through international deals?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. I believe the question would also could be directed to the international community. How can they work with Eritrea? So Eritrea has clear principle, clear policy, and has been consistent throughout its time. And way before its existence, it has always worked on regional stability. Even when Eritrea was not created as a entity before 1991 during the struggle for independence. So one way is, I guess we have to do continuously tell Eritrea's narrative, Eritrea's part of story. And a lot of people, when they hear about Eritrea, they had no knowledge. They are very, very ignorant when it comes to Eritrea. And again, you have the antagonist, you have the enemy camp that would have who has a very big mouthpiece and control the media, and they would come with labels earlier that we talked about North Korea. So these are the things that we have to fight against, and we have to show um, Eritrea's ability and capability to bring to um, contribute toward peace in the region. So we have to continue to tell our stories. We have to continue engage in diplomatic engagements and forums like this. Also, maybe if they will influence one or two people, and that's how continue. I hope I answered your question, Mike.
You did. Thank you.
I actually have over here in the chat from Rahel. She asks, is Eritrea considering opening up more to foreign journalists or international observers as part of changing that global narrative?
Thank you. So this is another assumption that Eritrea is a closed country, no journalism, no freedom of speech, and so on is um, available in Eritrea. But it's on the contrary. Eritrea has, and if you go to Eritrea, you listen to everybody's news outlet. Everyone has uh, um, those dish. Well, now still they don't have a lot of internet, but internet cafes and so on. So there are flow of information. People listen to various, to oppositions, to supporters, to all kinds of news. Now, allowing journalists. Eritrea has always allowed journalists. For instance, at one time I was talking to journalists without border about their coverage that says Eritrea doesn't allow journalists. The funny thing, the Voice of America journalist was in Asmara. He was interviewing the president himself. Yet it's the same news outlet was asking or making an assumption that Eritrea is a close nation. So it's not about letting or not letting journalists, but what are the journalists when they come out? What do they report? They don't report balance, not all of them, but most of them. And they go there with intention to write a negative report and very damaging report. And now they'll validate that by saying, "Oh, there were presidents at the place." So that is the issue. But any journalist who is want to go to Eritrea and report a balanced report. I'm not saying everything's rosy in Eritrea, and I'm not saying everything's. What I'm saying is everything's not bad, but have a balance. And when every time you write something, it has to have a historic context. It has to look at the holistics. You can't just report about incidents in isolation. They all are interconnected to one another. Like what earlier we were saying about Tigray and the current situation. So yeah, we are always fighting to get journalists and to go to Eritrea report. They're welcome, but again, they have to be with a good intention and not to have their hidden agendas and so on. So I hope Rahel answered your question.
All right, thank you, Dawi, for answering that question, and thank you, Rahel, for asking it as well. If anybody else has any question, I got here, Chidre wants to ask a question. Go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Evening.
I should start with saying thank you, Dawit, for coming on and sharing some thoughts on Eritrea, and thank you, Lemuel, for putting this together and the entire team. I also must apologize. My son, my 5-month-old son, is right next to me, so any interruptions he may cause, please do, please do forgive me.
It's free.
So my name's Shadira, Cambridge University alumni, and now I work in financial services in the City of London. I've actually just returned from a 3-month trip to Nairobi. So I'm curious about Eritrea's recent rejoin of IGAD. That's where my question is. And what I want to know is, do you see any possibility that it's in the future, near or distant, that Eritrea would choose to separate again from IGAD? And if they do that, what do you see as potential economic impacts to the region or to any sort of long-term investments that depend on free transfer, easy travel, easy transfer of goods and services between Eritrea and Nairobi, or Eritrea and other countries in the region? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think it's very important to understand why Eritrea separated in the first place. I remember back there, it's been a while, over 15 years, something like that. So the main reason was because the organization, the original organization itself, was deterring from its principles. It was voting a neighboring, like a member country, to invade another member country. That's the Ethiopia and Somalia. And Somalia was in a turmoil with its own internal problems, and was very felt disintegrated nation. There was chaos everywhere, and that fuels to the chaos again, which is and Eritrea did not try to oppose that, but however, it did not work. So that was the main reason, and it could be other reasons too that probably I'm not mentioning here. But to answer back to your question, Chidra, Eritrea will not pull out from this regional organization unless it is again compromised and it allows itself to be exploited by others. It allows itself its doors to be used as a tool um, to harm one another. So we'll continue to fight, and even if that happened, Eritrea will always continue to have a good relations with Kenya and its neighbors. Eritrea's commitment to IGAD goes way back 20, 30 years ago when Eritrea first got its independence and joined IGAD. And if you guys remember, it used to be, its mission was to fight desertification and regional locusts. And it was Eritrea's view. It says, no, we should go beyond that. It should be, the organization should aim at development, not only fighting locusts, deserts, and so on. So that shows Eritrea's vision and Eritrea's need or desire to strengthen the regional organization. So we all have to work together, and everybody, including your organization and everyone here, has a voice. So when we see something goes wrong, let's all stand united and fight for that regional organization to be stronger institution. I hope that sheds a little bit. I tried my best. Great, Shada.
Thank you, Chidera, for that question, and thank you, Dawit, for the answer as well. I also like to open up to anybody who has any other questions, like to speak up. Otherwise, you can also post it in the chat as well if there are any more questions. Jallo, your mic is muted.
Sorry about that. I was just saying that someone is typing in the chat. So I guess we should give them a bit of time to state their question. But in the meantime, I probably have a question of my own, which is, so Eritrea has managed to, hold its position, and has braved a tendency towards isolation, especially from the West. And I'm looking at that and thinking, could that be a model for Africa going forward? Is there a way that African countries can kind of, hold their positions in the face of extreme pressure by or from Western interests, and somehow manage to pursue their interests and assert their interests in a globalizing world? Could the Eritrean model work for all of Africa?
I believe so. We have no other choice, especially with the new Trump administration's policy that basically tell Africa, back up and take care of yourself. And this is time, and this way, way long overdue. Many African countries has become addicted to foreign aids and to corruptions and to neglecting. It become norm, and certain society has become like for leaders to steal from the coffer of the government, even looked at as heroes, and that's legitimized. So saying that, how could it be a model of here? Eritrea was able to do this because it went through that struggle when it fought for Eritrea's independence for 30 years. The only time that I can remember in history, the two superpower of the world, the United States led camp and the Soviet Union-led camp looked eye to eye was when it comes to denying Eritrea's independence. Both of them were supporting. If you guys remember those old enough, or if you read it, when the Eastern camp and the Western camp was, if somebody does to one, it was helping reciprocally. But when it comes to Eritrea, both sides was supporting the Derg, the Ethiopia. So and there was very minimum to zero support the Eritrean guerrilla fighters were getting. So they had to be innovative. They have to be resilience and the tenacity, and also embedded in the people's long history of withstanding and steadfastness that go all the way from the Turkish, the Italians, the Egyptians, and so on. So one thing that I see always for this kind of model to work, number one, there has to be a good political leadership, a leadership with a good political will, that to go forward, to be independent. And then the second part is you got to have a very conscious population. Eritreans everywhere, from little to old. You talk to them, they'll tell you the same story, and they understand what they go through. So that would allow to the government to observe some shocks. Otherwise, like we see anywhere, somebody comes with the reformist agenda, they don't last that long. And the coup d'etat or the uprise come within the society, not from outside. Of course, the outside are the main drivers. So, yes, this could be a model. For instance, Eritrea said no to USA aid 20 something, 25 years ago, something like that. And Eritrea got punished for that. How dare this little tiny poor nation take this kind of stand against the almighty United States? But 25 years later, Eritrea becomes vindictive. Eritrea was the only country voted no when Russia and Ukraine war. It's not because it support the war against Russia. I mean, against within one another. It's not because it's right, but the approach was wrong, and nobody was there to say that out loud. But now we see the Trump administration voting the same in line with Eritrea, and we said no to food aid in general, not because Eritrea was everybody had enough calories or food. Eritrea said no to food aid when it was a drought, when there was really, really hardship, when people were starving, because the FAO, the UN, all those national or regional organizations identified, there's a huge drought in East Africa. Somalia needs this million metric ton. Ethiopia needs this, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and everybody. So these organizations gave the food to everybody except Eritrea. They asked Eritrea to do this. Basically, use the food as a political tool, and we said no. And what we do, because of what I said earlier, your population is very important. So we asked the entire diaspora, explain the situation, and donate money. And we all did donate whatever we can. With that money, food was bought and the people were fed. And from that point on, we said, okay, you know what? You can't drive us with our throats. So we have to send. So these are, they sound it's very good. Self-reliance is not a new concept to Eritrea. Many African countries, including Tanzania, and Eritrea, and all them guys tried it. But it has to, you will go through very, very hardship. Now we see the new wind, like the decolonization of anti-imperialism and so on, that we see in like Burkina Faso, Mali, and so on. And we wish them the best. And that's what they have to, they start walking the first walk. So yeah, I know we can talk a lot, but just to say, for the sake of time, I guess I give you the gist of it. And together we can do it. Together we all, as long as we support one another. The diaspora has to be involved. People inside, they have to be involved. The military has to be involved. The villagers have to be involved, and everybody has to work. Like for instance, for Eritrea, the diaspora pay 2% of their income. Everybody. And that is kind of unique for everybody. But why? The reason behind it is you have young people like everybody's age here defending the country with their life. And it's either building it or in the military defending it. So the least the diaspora can do is support economically, and also reversing by reverse technologies and knowledge. And that's how we pursue. And that is not easy. Always there is a pullback, like why we pay this? You know, we live here in America and England, and so always you got to raise people's consciousness and so on. And by the way, if anybody here has not paid, caught up with you 2%, make sure you caught up. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Actually, you know, while you were talking, while you were answering Chala's question, I actually had a bit of a question myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you were talking about how Eritrea was a bit sort of like ahead of the curve when it came to rejecting foreign aid 15 years ago. You know, it was seen as like a very unique sort of stance, specifically because like, you know, it went against like what most other countries were doing at the time. But looking at the situation now, it could almost be seen as like kind of ultimately like the wiser decision to make, because now with the sudden drop in funding towards aid, many countries are now trying to fill in that void quickly however they can. But because of Eritrea's rejection of it, you know, it almost like kind of makes the country seem a lot more wise in forms of in like how they're deciding foreign policy, and it could potentially lead to many other countries in Africa following Eritrea's example and to be more self-sufficient, or to look for other actors around the world that may not have like such like a deep relationship with as like alternatives. But and I guess like broadly speaking, with this like new shift, with this shift in foreign policy with the United States, how do you think that will affect Eritrea's stance in the Horn of Africa? Do you think other countries would follow Eritrea's model? Do you think like, you know, that would encourage greater cooperation with many countries in Africa with Eritrea? Or do you think like it could even make relations between the Horn of Africa and the United States better or worse?
I think the new policy is long overdue, and I think it is going to help the African nations. Not the current generation. The current generation has to prepare itself to sacrifice. When I say sacrifice, I don't mean like die or kill, but it has to work to make better for the future generation, because this is not going to be easy. I mean, we were talking about century old way of dealing business that is becoming disrupt, and also it will bring an opportunity. At the same time, it might also bring some challenge. Now, we live no more in a unipolar society. We live in multipolar society. We have other uh, players with ambitions of their own. We talked about the UAE involvement in South Africa and Sudan, and So with that, it can create this void that is created by United States. Maybe can be filled by other countries. You have China, Russia, Turkey, all those unipolar countries, I mean, multipolar powers that are merging. And all of them are trying to expand, trying to find, expand their influence and expand lands that they control, critical minerals and agriculture products and so on. And now the playground is like Africa. And we have to be, again, work together. So you need a strong leadership again, very strong leadership who's willing to put its people, its nation first. And with that, and you also have to prepare yourself to be demonized, to be ridiculed, to be insulted, to be called all kinds of names, to the point that your own population would hate you. And that's the whole point. And control the mind, and you control everything else. That is the strategy. And it's easy to point out shortcomings. In Eritrea, people were complaining about electricity, not having enough electricity, and but at the same time, they worked with the government. They understood with what the governments are doing, and they shared whatever the power. Everybody, leaders, from the president all the way to ministers to ambassadors to general directors to the day laborer. If you live in one area, the whole block is if it is off, it's off. And but eventually, with the uh, potential, I mean, with internal power, um, the electric power was able to restored and so on. So these are the things that we have to always advocate to people that it's going to be it's not going to be an easy challenge. Um, but again, we don't believe, like for us, we don't believe in copying a model of somebody to someone from someone. That's what in the first place Africa was one of its problem. We see countries, they copy or inherit the colonizers culture, including the wig. If you go to some courts, we have indigenous African, traditional indigenous way of um, resolving conflicts. But why do you have to copy constitution from one country? Why do you have to be uh, mimic another one? So everybody, yes, there are some lessons to be learned from Eritrea, but let's say if we're speaking of Kenya, but Kenya has its own already advanced technology and capacity, and has own different challenge that Eritrea doesn't have, Ethiopia and so on. So, but always it has to be conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawit, for that answer. I think that fully sufficiently answers, my question, especially, regarding this shift just being like so current. I feel like that this is a very, important topic to discuss, as well as, its implications, at least for that part of the world. Now, for if there's anybody else who would like to ask any of the questions, whether through audio or through the chat, please speak and type it in now. Otherwise, I feel like that we could just be able to, complete the session early. So if anybody else has any other questions that they'd like to say, or by mic or text in the chat, please speak now.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm just here as an individual, private citizen, no affiliation with any institution. So first, I'd like to say thanks to Lemuel and Chala and Dawit for contributing greatly to this conversation and for organizing it. I am curious, I guess from the embassy's perspective, what tourism opportunities exist in Eritrea that would appeal to a broad range of travelers? And looking regionally, what kinds of multilateral tourism initiatives might be possible between Eritrea and other countries in the Horn? Um, I am aware that those of us from the diaspora, those of us living in the diaspora, have had a taste of what tourism uh, is and can look like in Eritrea. Um, I'm aware that one of the earliest, if not the first mosque on the African continent, the Al Sahaba Mosque, is located in the port city of Massawa. And I also know that there are significant historical sites tied to the 30-year war, the 30-year armed struggle for independence. So I know that even though the decolonization process for Eritrea, has been really long and messy, and the country is in its rebuilding phase, but is there an appetite, or is there an interest from the embassy, from the government of Eritrea, to uh, open tourism and also expand that with other countries in the region?
Okay, thank you for the question, and I think it has two parts of answer for this question, important question. Number one, just the short version, is tourism is open to Eritrea. People apply on a daily basis. I'm not talking about Eritreans. Um, eh, if you're Eritrean, you go with Eritrean ID, but I'm non-Eritrean tourists. Yeah, there's a continuous flow of people going to Eritrea and enjoying Eritrea and come back. Is it big? No, not yet. And the second part is what kind of potential Eritrea has. Eritrea has enormous potential for tourism. It has over 1,000-mile coast line. I mean, Red Sea. It has over 360 islands. We then the slogan for the tourism is 3 seasons in 2 hours. And literally, you go from below sea and extremely hot, and then you go to mild, and then you go to the highlands to cold, where you have to wear a jacket literally. So and it also has wildlife. It has one other big potential that is like Eritrea is considered to be the second largest, the second the biggest country to have archaeology after Egypt, because of its location. Eritrea was one of the first countries to accept Christianity. Eritrea was in sub-Saharan Africa, and this first country to accept Islam. And all those archaeology or architects are there to be viewed. And many people admire the country, how peaceful, clean, and so on is. Now, the potential are enormous, and that can really bring a big, um, economic potential to the country. Now, or capital to the country. Now, the problem that the third part that I'd like to address is that still Eritrea is developing. Eritrea was focusing and protecting its existential threat. Eritrea has been under attack non-stop. Out of 100 years, maybe we had 7 years peaceful time, but always been under attack, always been under war. If it is not a active war, it's a siege of war. So with that, the main part that is important to tourism, there are several important parts. The piece is there, but infrastructures need to be developed. It has to be good hotels, water, clinics, communications like phones and Wi-Fi and all that. So that's going to take time. It's not there. It's not that there's not a will. There's a will, but you can't just have thousands of people come to Asmara to Eritrea and you have not ready for that yet. So that's going to be it will need little work and a lot of investment, a lot of investment. So I don't know the numbers, I remember the future plans, but I know slowly things are being developed, but there's a lot of interest to go to visit. And a lot of people like go to Kenya. One of the things that I hear a lot is like, oh, they go to Kenya, and well, and these are Americans. Well, in Kenya, we're gonna go visit. Now, there is no direct connection between to go from Kenya to Asmara or from Asmara to Kenya. You have to go outside the continent. You have to go either to Europe or to Middle East, like Dubai, and then fly. That cannot. We should have. That's what institution like IGAD needs to be stronger. We should have a road that connects Asmara to Nairobi, Nairobi to Mogadishu, to Djibouti, to Addis, to Khartoum, to Juba, you know, just like here in the United States or in other UK. So yeah, these are very important stuff that need to develop, but eventually, yeah, it will be in good shape. But thank you for the question, though. I hope I answer your question. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Dawit.
No, I hope I answer Adam's question.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Adiam, for the question, and thank you, Dawit, for your answer. We just got a question from Inda Abeti. And for here, like he asked, what are your thoughts on the recent generic statements from Marco Rubio on Eritrea's Independence Day? Also, how do U.S.-Eritrean relations look for in the near future?
Thank you. So the recent statements from the Secretary of State, Mike Rubio, toward Eritrea is very positive, even though it's generic. But there's one key element, sentence, not a sentence, a word, that has been added that was absent for a very, very long time. Always the U.S. says, we wish the Eritrean people happy Independence Day, and we share this. We share this kind of value, and we wish the Eritrean people happy Independence Day. But this time, there's that word says government. The Eritrean people, and we like to work the Eritrean people and the government. So that is, it might look very small, but it's a very positive sign from my perspective. And also the fact that President Trump also writing a letter of congratulatory to President Isaias Afwerki is another a good positive indicator. Now, what is the prospect for the future? The future, of course, we all have to sit and wait, but from our part, we're doing all the best that we can. We have no fault, we have no problem, we have no hatred, we have nothing against the United States. It's the US that always see us through the lens of what's going on in Ethiopia. We can go 80 years, John Donne's Foster. We were annexed when every African country was getting their independence. Eritrea was annexed with Ethiopia because what John, the Secretary of State at the time, Dallas Foster stated, despite Eritrea's people need and despite justice, Eritrea should be annexed with Ethiopia. That was in the 1940s. And the same policy follows now. It may change, but the same thing. So for 30 years, when we were fighting against against Ethiopia for our independence, the United States sided with Ethiopia all this time. And then after a referendum, there was a brief moment of peace. and U.S. Eritrea relationship was very good. And then after 7 years, again, TPLF-led government invaded Eritrea, and then the U.S. sided with Eritrea. For 20 years, they occupied illegally a swath of land that was decided by the Hague Court toward Eritrea, and nobody said anything. And the entire United Nations Security Council that was led by the United States and UK and other China and everybody didn't say anything. For 20 years, we were under no peace, no war circumstances. And all this time, we've been lobbying, we've been asking, we've been trying to form the United States government. What you're doing is wrong. And need a shift. This policy needs a shift, but it didn't. And now in 2020, when the TPLF attacked the federal government of Ethiopia and then launched a missile toward Eritrea, like what I answered in the first question. And again, the United States decided to side with Ethiopia, and now there's a constant claim saying, "Well, there's active sanction right now from the United States executive order over Eritrea. This is from the war in Ethiopia." So there are four functions that they mentioned: the Ethiopian force, the main federal force, defense force, and the Fanos, the Amhara Fanos, the TDF, the Tigray, and Eritrea. And this is the war inside Eritrea, inside Ethiopia. And later on, everything got lifted, but the Eritrean part is still renewed. And now they kept insisting, no, Eritrean forces are inside Tigray. And Eritrea is saying, no, we are not. We are within international recognized boundaries. And we are inside our defense lines. And so all this, what I'm trying to say is the prospect of U.S. Eritrea improvement of policy, that will depend on how the U.S. Start reframing its policy. So we are constantly advocating that Eritrea is a very important region, one of the most stable in the region, and the Red Sea that's controlling Eritrea's part is peaceful, and so on. And Eritrea has a potential to contribute, but also always there is something that has to undermine Eritrea because of its sand. So the prospects, again, we wait to see, but I'm an optimistic person as a person, and we hope that becomes better. We're working hard through friends, directly, through our public diplomacy, and we are trying to demonstrate that Eritrea is a good partner. Eritrea is a principal country. Eritrea is peaceful and country. So, and we hope with the new administration, we get something to be heard of. But always there's a political tradition. There are political culture of the United States. Some of them do not go with anybody, with any African or Eritrea. We talk about human rights. We have a very similar stance on all that. So all these different policies need to be addressed, and we hope with the new administration things will get better slowly, not too big, but yeah. I hope I answered your question and more.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawi. And I think Inda Beatty just responded saying, "Sir, I appreciate your detailed answer. I wish you all the success in your future endeavors."
Thank
So
you.
thank you, and Beatty, for that very kind message. We also have like another question in the chat from Rahel. As a member of the Eritrean diaspora, is there anything they can do to help change the international narrative about Eritrea and contribute more positively to how the country is understood globally?
Yes, yes, there is. So we have what we call a public diplomacy group, and each state, Norahel is Minnesota, so your senator, your congress people in Minnesota has to be always informed, and journalists who write stories, they have to be informed. Think tank groups always have to be informed. And so, yes, the diaspora and some states are doing amazing work. We had a few from Texas and from Idaho, from New Jersey. These are they made an appointment with their Congress and with their senators, and in DC. They flew all the way. They pay for their ticket, their own hotel, and just to discuss Eritrea's position. And it makes an impact. It always have an impact. So that's what we have to do. We just continuously have to engage with bilateral engagement, and also we would continue to write. And I encourage everybody here. Very soon we'll have um, a newsletter that we'll be publishing um, that talks about Eritrea's narrative, and we'd be happy if you can contribute. And I'm not sure when exactly we'll be launching, but definitely you'll hear about it once you see it, and we'll be happy if you can write your experience, and it could be any African view, and so on. So thank you, Rahel, and I know you're smart, so you can. Everybody's smart here, and that's what and makes it exciting. And these are the type of people that we need uh, to uh, to counter attack, counter punch what's going on. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dewi. Thank you, Dowie, for your answer, and thank you, Rahel, for your question. We have like about 15 minutes left, but we could be able to end it off early, if no one else has any questions. Otherwise, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to speak now, through mic or through the chat.
Yes, I have one more question. This has to do with the basically regional integration. You addressed the issue of Eritrea's membership in IGAD, and that I think is very important. There is also the East African community, of which I think Eritrea is not a member as of now, but which hopefully is going to join in the future. I was
Which
wondering.
organization? Sorry to.
That's okay. The East African community.
Okay.
Yes.
The
So,
Ekosawa. Ekosawa.
sorry.
The Ekosawa. You're.
No. The East African community, where, in fact, recently Somalia. I'm asking in part because very recently Somalia joined, and Ethiopia is poised to join in the very near future. And I'm thinking we should also have Eritrea and Djibouti. It makes sense to have these countries in the East African community. Originally, that was just Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, but it's grown, and we have DR Congo, South Sudan, Djibouti, I should say Burundi, Rwanda, Somalia, and very soon Ethiopia. So I'm wondering how you feel about the prospects of Eritrea eventually joining this sub-regional grouping over and above IGAD, of course.
Sure. I mean, I've heard a little bit about the East African community, but not much. However, it is always I always believe it is a good idea to have certain commonalities, to have some sort of very well built institutions to develop interconnectivity. And yes, and that's, I mean, eventually, so many people talk about the African Union, and yes, but locally we have to work and work together and develop our infrastructure, our institutions, our all kinds of development plans. And yeah, I'll look into it more, and this is a good idea, and we'll see what is uh, what is the objective and so on. I have not looked into it deeply, but certainly, and I welcome you if you send me any literature and that as well. I'd like to educate myself.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chalo, for your question, and thank you, Dawit, for your response. But with that said, I think that covers about everything. Thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you, Dawit, again so much for your attendance. And is there any final things you'd like to say?
No, just thank you for giving me the opportunity, and this is a wonderful discussion, and we need to continue to do this. And I encourage everybody who's here, you're here because you have some sort of interest in your local politics or in community and so on. So I encourage everybody to get involved. Let's run our own narrative, our own country, our own community, and develop it. So there are so many other different organizations. I encourage for the East Africa Society of Cambridge also to connect with the others and expand your influence. Good job. Thank you very much. And you have a nice weekend. Or for us, we have one more day. Today's a holiday for those in the United States. It's a Memorial Day, but for the rest, I know you guys are at work. So have a wonderful week. Thank you very much.
Chalo, is there anything that you would like to say?
I would just like to thank you first of all, Samuel, Lemuel rather, for taking the lead on this and making it happen. Lemuel was the lead person here, and he made this happen. He deserves all the credit, and of course, I would like to thank His Excellency for gracing this opportunity. Thank you very much, sir. We are very, very honored. As a journalist for many years, I'm one of those people that have always felt that we were missing out on what's really going on in Eritrea. And this is a great opportunity for me. I will continue to remain plugged in, wanting to learn more, and hopefully one of these days even visit. Maybe you'd write a story. Hopefully that would be great.
Yes.
And it's been a great pleasure to meet so many people from different countries. I saw someone from Nigeria, someone from China, so many different countries. Besides everyone from Eritrea, it's a great honor. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Lemuel, for inviting me. My name is Dawit Haile. I am the head of the political and diplomatic affairs at Embassy of Eritrea in Washington, D.C. And I am very grateful for Lemuel and your team, the East African Cambridge East African Society, to organize this important session and to allow to give Eritrea a voice to tell its narrative. Thank you very much, and I encourage everybody who's here in this platform to do the same. Lemuel is a young that I've known him for before he was born. He was in Minnesota, and he continued to pursue his school, and he became a very advocate to Eritrea. And we need all young people like Lemuel and everybody else also to pursue in supporting their home of origin Thank you, and thank you for everybody.
Thank you, Dawit. Thank you for your interest. So now, I guess if everything's taken care of, if no one has any like immediate questions or concerns to express, we could start off the session now with actually some very recent news from a press release that was given by the Eritrean Embassy in the United States just a little over a week ago in response to what was a U.S. Senate and Foreign Relations Committee hearing on East Africa that occurred about 2 weeks ago. And, there was plenty of talks on like several countries, as well as plenty of talks in Eritrea's role in the region from America's perspective. Specifically, the guest speaker, Joshua Mersave, and Senator Chris Van Hollen were talking about Eritrea's alleged involvement in the Tigray War, as well as its relation with Ethiopia after the war. And very specifically, if anybody would like to check the Senate hearing on YouTube or, the press release in the embassy's website, Senator Van Hollen was expressing concerns over a boiling situation and implying that there is like a potential war that could break out between Eritrea and Ethiopia. Could you possibly shed some light on Eritrea's stance this past few years and your reaction to many media reports of a potential brewing war going on between the two countries?
Well, I also forgot. Thank you for raising this important issue. But I forgot to wish everybody happy 34th Eritrea's Independence Day. So, with the question that you raised, with all due respect to Mr. Meserve and Senior Senator Van Hollen, I believe their characterization of Eritrea's role in the Horn of Africa, particularly, excuse me, let me just.
Of course.
Yeah. So their view regarding the Tigray conflict and post-war relation with Ethiopia is, everybody knows this is based on misreading of the facts on the ground and regional dynamics. Their statements are based on a flawed reading of events on the ground. The Tigray conflict was triggered by TPLF. It was unprovoked attack in Eritrea that includes missile strikes on over 100 strategic infrastructure sites inside Eritrea, such as like power stations, water reservoirs, factories, hospitals, and civilian areas. So Eritrea's response was a matter of national defense, not aggression. Eritrea's involvement during the Tigray conflict cannot be separated from its long-standing security concern. The TPLF, which initiated the conflict in November 2020, has a well-documented history of aggression toward Eritrea, including passive invasions, provocations, and support for destabilizing elements. Eritrea's action during this conflict were focused on neutralizing these destabilizing factors, not pursuing expansion or confrontation with its neighborly country. Second, the suggestion that Eritrea and Ethiopia are on the brink of war is both speculative and unfounded, since the historic peace agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia in 2018, both governments were taking significant steps to normalize relations. While the piece of institutional implementation may vary, there is no credible evidence to support their claims, the senators and Mr. Meserve's claims that imminent conflict is imminent around the Horn of, between Eritrea and Ethiopia. On the contrary, Eritrea has repeatedly expressed its desire for peaceful, cooperative regional relations based on mutual sovereignty and non-interference policy. Today, Eritrea is fully within its internationally recognized border, a fact that has been clearly and repeatedly affirmed through official channels. Yet, for reasons that I don't really understand, Mr. Meservey and Senator Van Hollen seem to suggest otherwise, which is both inaccurate and unhelpful to get the peace going, peace between the two countries. As for claims of brewing war, and they are unfounded, again, the unfortunately, much of the media discourse on Eritrea continues to rely on secondary sources, anonymous claims, or politically motivated narratives, often without direct engagement with Eritrea's perspective. It's not that they don't understand, they know very well what Eritrea's perspective is. However, for reasons again that it bothers me, always these accusations are distorted and disinformed, and which created a distorted image of Eritrea's intention and policy. Eritrea remains committed, as always, it is in its history, it's its track record, that um, it is committed to regional peace, security, and economic integration of the entire Horn of Africa. The country vision is rooted in non-aggression, mutual respect, and a desire to build stable, independent institutions across the Horn of Africa. Like IGAD, we would like to see it to be very independent and strong institution that advance the interests of the Horn of Africa people. Such, like alarmist rhetorics that we hear, they does a little to support this vision. And in fact, it undermines the possibility of constructive dialogue with one another. I would encourage a more balanced approach that includes listening, we said active listening, to all stakeholders, not to one faction to advance for other motives, but to all stakeholders with intention to create a stable political environment, and avoiding conclusions based on unverified reports or other assumptions or outdated assumptions. So that's how I can respond to your question, Lemuel.
Sure, absolutely. And I could definitely see like a lot of misrepresentations and like over exaggerations, like especially over the potential for a conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. I mean, just from personal anecdotal experience, like many friends and relatives that we have back in Asmara, if you talk to them about like potential for boiling war, for them it's just like, what war, what's going on, what potential situation, relations between the two countries may not be at the best, but there is no like fear of war or mobilization in any sense that could be felt like in the capital or from anybody that I could say that I know back in Eritrea. Um, Looking at it like a little more broadly, because you gave like a very broad explanation on Eritrea's stance. So I like to ask this. Many analysts describe Eritrea as like a largely isolationist nation, lacking relations with the outside world, and even sort of being nicknamed poorly as the North Korea of Africa. However, we have seen over the past several years that Eritrea has no qualms in engaging with neighboring countries on multiple levels. Whether it could be through Eritrea rejoining IGAD, or it could be the Trilateral partnership that was made with Egypt and Somalia, both of which we'll elaborate more on later. Um, what can you describe as the key pillars of Eritrea's foreign policy with other countries in East Africa? And how can you describe how they took these key principles into action in the
Well,
past
yeah,
recent years?
it's I touched on that a little bit. Usually when people talk about North Korea of Eritrea, when they describe Eritrea as North Korea of Africa, one saying that comes to my mind, a sarcastic in a way, it's there's somewhere I read like it's calling Switzerland as a Himalaya of Europe, just because it has mountains. So these are kind of lazy talking descriptions and labeling point that oversimplify and distort the reality and ground, distort Eritrea's image. It was made specifically for that. Eritrea is not isolationist. It is independent. There's a difference. Eritrea choose um, engagement based on clear principles, mutual respect, sovereignty, and non-interference. So this does not subscribe to the notion that legitimacy comes from how many press conferences you hold or external powers backs you up. Over the past several years, Eritrea has actively engaged with neighboring countries. We've seen that extremely well coordinated engagements, and in the international community as well. It played a central role in a 2018 peace agreement with Ethiopia without any foreign mediation. It has um, maintain constructive relations with Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, Egypt, Kenya, cooperating on issues ranging from infrastructure to trade to regional security and stability, fighting terrorism, and so on. Eritrea resists dependency, double standard, and coercive diplomacy. If refusing to bow to pressures, sanctions, being bullied, um, maintains dependency, or invite foreign interference earn you a nickname, then perhaps I think the issue lies not with Eritrea, but with the mindset behind those labels. So let's move beyond headlines and start having honest conversations about sovereignty, regional ownership, and kind of um, partnership that actually lead to peace progress. So yeah, that's how I see with the pillars and so on.
All right, great. Yeah, and I'm sure like, many of those pillars have definitely shown up.
Certainly. And I welcome you if you send me any literature and that as well. I'd like to educate myself.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chalo, for your question, and thank you, Dawid, for your response. But with that said, I think that covers about everything. Thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you, Dawid, again so much for your attendance. And is there any final things you'd like to say?
No, just thank you for giving me the opportunity, and this is a wonderful discussion, and we need to continue to do this. And I encourage everybody who's here, you're here because you have some sort of interest in your local politics or in community and so on. So I encourage everybody to get involved. Let's run our own narrative, our own country, our own community, and develop it. So there are so many other different organizations. I encourage for the East Africa Society of Cambridge also to connect with the others and expand your influence. Good job. Thank you very much. And you have a nice weekend. Or for us, we have one more day. Today's a holiday for those in the United States. It's a Memorial Day, but for the rest, I know you guys are at work. So have a wonderful week. Thank you very much.
Jallo, is there anything that you would like to say?
I would just like to thank you first of all, Samuel, Lemuel rather, for taking the lead on this and making it happen. Lemuel was the lead person here, and he made this happen. He deserves all the credit, and of course, I would like to thank His Excellency for gracing this opportunity. Thank you very much, sir. We are very, very honored. As a journalist for many years, I'm one of those people that have always felt that we were missing out on what's really going on in Eritrea. And this is a great opportunity for me. I will continue to remain plugged in, wanting to learn more, and hopefully one of these days even visit. Maybe you'd write a story. Hopefully that would be great.
Yes.
And it's been a great pleasure to meet so many people from different countries. From I saw someone from Nigeria, someone from China, so many different countries. Besides everyone from Eritrea, it's a great honor. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Lemuel, for inviting me. My name is Dawit Haile. I am the head of the political and diplomatic affairs.
فطر قوداي عطل الزبدة هاي كم زركب عاوتا هاي تمهرن عنده كم تسمع صيغتا هاي كم تسمع صيغتا عنده عند عبيدو ناقر عبيدو كم تعلمادو كنقر قرانكيدو أطحمدو نغينا نقمار كويست النقدام لبحر التنكيف كانوا خينات معدام سمسمر كنينو هدما قدميت كوينو صلالا قنينو علة ساينو عندو